Hey everybody, welcome back to Furniture Flipping Teacher. In this video, I'm going to be transforming this piece of furniture for a client of mine. Let's get into it. There have been a few times that I have started thinking about what exactly I wanted to do on this piece. I've had it for about a year or two now, honestly, and this is one of my favorite pieces that I have ever found on Facebook Marketplace. I got it for only $75, and I just never nailed down a design plan until now because I had someone email me locally here and they were watching my YouTube channel, and she wanted to know if I had anything that could potentially store her and her husband's records. And when she came to the shop to check out some of the inventory that I had, I thought of this piece. She fell in love with it. It's the exact right size, so I'm excited to get this piece started and give it a beautiful transformation. I think that there's so much design to work with on this piece. I've nailed down the design with her, so let's get into it. I'm excited. So typically when I start a furniture flip, I remove all of the hardware first, but there's no hardware, no true hardware on this set or on this piece. So I'm not gonna do that step, obviously. But something that my client and I have decided is that we want to kind of eliminate some of the features on the front of this piece. And that feature is the outer rectangular shapes that's sticking out a little bit. There's a couple reasons for it. One of the main reasons being that a lot of them are chipped, and while I could recreate them and fix them up, she decided that she didn't want them on at all. And so the other reason is because it just kind of makes this piece super busy. We're gonna keep the inside pieces, but I'll explain the design plan here in just a little while. So I'm gonna try see a couple methods to see what works the best for removing these outside pieces. I'm not 100% sure how they are attached, so we're just going to see how we can get them unattached. I've got a putty knife and a hammer, so I'm gonna see if that works first. Otherwise, I'll have to think of something different. But I'm hoping that this will maybe help me just pry it up. I don't want to damage the wood behind if at all possible. Might be easier to open this. Get a little bit of a better angle here. Well, I already caused more damage for myself, but that's fixable. Alrighty then, that is gonna be a pretty substantial amount of work to get those off, but then the main thing is gonna be to get this area smoothed out. So I'm gonna have to be using a lot of Bondo for this, but also I'm gonna go ahead and see if I can remove these. I'm gonna put them back on, but we wanna leave these details as wood. So I think that right now, while I'm getting everything, all the outside parts off, I may as well just go ahead and start seeing if I can get these off in one piece, because like I said, we're gonna be reusing them. Okay, I think I'm gonna do a change of plans. I got this one off and it really wasn't that difficult to get off, but it's taking a lot of veneer and then even some of the under material, the particle board, off. And so again, it's just gonna make a lot more work in the end. So I think I'm gonna leave the middle portions on and just sand them down while they're on the piece and stain them after I get everything painted. But I just wanted to see if that was gonna be an option, but it looks like I think the other way would be the best option. So I'm just gonna return back to getting the outside portions off. This is done. That step is done. So that means that next I need to clean up, and then we're gonna start filling this stuff in with Bondo. But I do wanna go ahead and sand down some of this stuff so that way it's all even and not like protruding out, and then we'll put Bondo on it. So like I said, I'm gonna take my sander and just smooth everything out as well as possible so nothing's protruding out, because the goal is to get it all flattened out, and I really wanna just apply the Bondo, but there are some wood pieces that are still, you know, raised, so I need to flatten it all out before I'm able to do the Bondo. So I've got an 80 grit on my Surf Prep sander here, and we're going to just go ahead and smooth everything out. So I got as much as I could of the areas around this sanded down, but like I can't get my sander in here or up top here. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove the drawers. I think that's the move anyway, just to work on them a little bit more in detail, I guess. So I'm just gonna go ahead and unscrew all of the hinges, get them off, and then we'll continue on with removing all of the finish and smoothing everything out. Okay. Now I'll also label them because I want to make sure they get put back where they're supposed to. Now that I've got the edging and all of the loose wood and things like that smoothed out, it's time to fill it all in with some Bondo, and we're gonna need quite a bit of Bondo. It's going to be essentially covering like a majority of these doors, and we're probably gonna end up needing multiple rounds of it, but we're gonna do it. So I've got my 2-part Bondo here, and so we're gonna go in with the putty first. I'm gonna mix quite a bit because I'm just gonna be spreading it on the surface, so it's not like it's a whole bunch of different places to where I would, you know, not want it to dry too quickly, but okay, so we've got quite a bit there, and then I'll just, you know, mix more as time goes on. Okay, and then I'm just gonna begin and start by spreading it on. It always looks worse before it looks better, right? The Bondo's dry, hardened up. So we've got a lot more sanding to go to get everything evened out. I'm kind of hoping it's only gonna take 1 layer, but there may be some areas where it needs more like 2 layers, but we're just gonna go to town with some more sanding. I'm switching to a 120 grit just so it's not super coarse, but I may switch back to an 80 depending on how this goes. I got all of the Bondo sanded down. So these are looking pretty good. They're nice and flat and even in most places. I'm sure that there's still more places that I need to fill in, but I'll kind of do that after I do the first round of primer. That way things will really pop out. Right now it's kind of just a lot of textures and colors going on. I've done a lot of feeling around and it's for the most part very smooth. My next step is to take each door and sand down this portion of the door, this little detail, to the raw wood as well, because later on we will be staining that and keeping just this portion wood. And so I want to get this original finish off so that we can start fresh and clean. Something that I do really love about the Surf Prep sander is that you can make it so that your sander will really contour to any sort of angle or shape that is on your project. So like for instance, this is kind of an interesting shape. It's not really flat. It has some curves to it. And so I'm gonna take my sander here and then I'm gonna add a foam interface pad like so. This black pad, it's pretty squishy. And then they also have other ones that are a little bit more dense, so they're not going to be as contoury, but still a little bit less just like hard as the normal interface pad. But I'm going to go ahead and attach that on. And then once you do that, you still have this same Velcro. So you can choose any grit you want. I'm going to go with a 120 grit, and then you can put that on your sander like so. But now it's a lot more squishy, so it'll conform to the area that you're sanding. And the best part is if you don't have a Surf Prep sander like in the 3x4 or an orbital, they also provide options for sanders that you may already have at home, like a mouse sander or a 5-inch orbital sander or a square sander, things like that. They have the interface pads on their website. So check out the links down below. Use code FFT10 on any Surf Prep purchase. Whether you're refilling your sandpaper or you're buying a Surf Prep for the first time, check them out and use my code and links down below. All right, you guys, sanding is done, at least on the doors for now. Of course, probably have to sand a little bit later, but the bulk of it is finished, which I am so happy about because that honestly took a really long time. But I'm gonna go ahead and wipe these down and give them a nice clean. And then I'm also going to get this piece reattached onto the door where I had removed it originally. And then I'm going to stain these detail pieces so that once they're stained, we can tape them off and then we'll be able to paint the doors. I figure that it may just be easier if I stain it first and then tape it and then paint it, as opposed to taping it off, painting it, and then staining it, because I'm afraid I would potentially get some stain on the new paint job. So I think that the best way to go is stain first. So we are going to go with kind of a more warm tone of a wood, of a stain for these pieces, and just gonna like help them pop against the black a little bit. Oh, I don't know if I already told you, but we're painting this black. So I just wanna get all this dust wiped off. Plus I haven't really cleaned them in the first place. Usually I clean immediately, and you guys are probably questioning why I didn't do that. I think I mean, obviously the first step was demoing, and so then I just kind of got carried away and didn't end up cleaning until now. I haven't worked on the body of it yet, so I'll definitely clean that before I do any more steps on the body. Okay, those are gonna need to dry out a little bit before we get stain on them, but I'm gonna get everything else prepped, and let's attach this as well. I am going to be staining these. We're gonna be using an Old Smoky gel stain in the color Tennessee Whiskey. This is one of my go-to colors, honestly, for stains. I love the tone of it. And it kind of has some reddish tones, but also is like, yeah, I mean, it's warm enough to still complement black really well. So I'm just gonna mist the wood a little bit, and then I have a blue sponge here that I'm gonna be using to apply the stain or to rub it in. Make sure to get the edges as well. Okay, now I really feel like things are gonna start moving and grooving a little bit quicker than they have been already. I'm gonna get this base sanded or cleaned down, and then we're gonna scuff sand everything, fill in any repairs that need to happen so that we can start moving on to the primer. This is the Lily Moon Furniture Prep Cleaner. Again, this does not take any rinse. So I always like to use it when I can, just to kind of help speed up the process, especially on longer projects like this. I don't have to rinse any residue off. Just want to make sure that this piece is nice and clean though, so that the primer will really adhere well. This piece was quite dirty because one, I've been working on it, like on top of it for the whole entire time. And then two, it's been out in the shop or in the front of the store area, and we've had a lot of construction going on due to someone running into the front of the store. That's all fixed now, but things got pretty dusty and I still need to organize the front of the shop before I'm able to get things back to normal around here. Okay, time to make some repairs with Bondo. I've been using lots of Bondo on this piece, but it was much needed on the doors, but there's a pretty big gouge back over here on the back side of, there's a couple bigger gouges on the back side of the unit. So I want to go ahead and start to mold that with some Bondo. I'm just going to mix some up here. And then there's also a couple areas that I have some missing veneer, some peeled off, and so I need to go ahead and get that filled in with the Bondo as well. So these are the two main big ones that I see on the top here. And so once that kind of dries up and hardens, I will go ahead and sand it back and see if we need another round. And then if we do, great. If not, then we'll move on to primer. And when I do the primer, that's when I'll really be able to tell if this is, you know, the only areas on the top and on the sides that need to be filled in. Otherwise, I may have to do another round after coat one of primer. All right, I am going to begin taping off the insides here. I'm gonna keep the insides wood because she wants to put records in here, and she has some little shelving stands that can hold the records really nicely. And so just to minimize any potential scratching that may happen, we're gonna keep these wood inside. Plus it's gonna match with the wood detail that's on the outside of the unit. So I wanna tape off this entire section to not get any paint in the inside here. And one of my favorite things to use is the tape that has the plastic already attached on it. And then also I'll go in with some frog tape because this is the ultimate tape. In my opinion, I think that it gives the best peel and it really just does a great job. So we're going to tape off so that we can prime, finally. It's been a long time coming. Okay, it's finally time to get set up for primer. I am going to be doing the doors inside of this tent, and I'm going to go ahead and prop them up with my painter's pyramids. These will just kind of lift them off the ground. That way nothing gets stuck to the drop cloth here, and it'll be really nice and easy to spray. All right, I'm gonna be using Binge shellac base primer in a spray can, and then I've got this handy dandy little trigger that is going to save my finger. Shout out to Samantha, she sent me over one when she saw me spraying last time with my finger on the nozzle the entire time. It was painful, but we got it done, but this should go a lot quicker. So I'm just gonna do nice light even coats and get the whole surface covered. Binge shellac is a stain blocking primer, but it's also great for exposed particle board, which there is some, exposed MDF board, and just chipboard and things like that, because it'll seal it all in, not let any water go into the surface and get absorbed by that and then potentially expand in the future. That is something that we definitely don't want. And then of course it's gonna help with bonding in the end when we start to paint. Primer is dry, so I am going to move on to the next step, which in this case is going to be me just sanding smooth the primer and making sure that there's no roughness. There's a lot of roughness right now, so I want to knock back all that texture. We'll see if I need another coat of primer. Right now it's looking good, and I'm going to be going with black, so I'm not 100% worried about bleed through as I might be if it were a lighter color. But there are also a few gouges that did pop out with the primer, which was the intention of priming as well, because that really helps pop out any areas that may have been missed during repairs. There's a few on this side over here, so I'll need to fill those in with Bondo and sand those again. But for now, I've got a foam abrasive. It's a fine, or a little bit, it's a medium plus grit. So not too gritty, but also not the finest, but it'll just really help knock back that roughness. And then of course the goal is not to remove any of the primer. We're not trying to sand through to the wood again. We just want to do a nice light coat of sanding. All right, I'm also going to do some sanding on the doors as well. Make sure that everything is all nice and smooth. And then I also still need to prime the back sides of them. I ran out of spray primer, so I'm probably just gonna do some roller primer with the same Binge shellac base, because I thought that it was gonna be a good idea to do the spray primer, but it's so expensive and it doesn't go nearly as far. It's a little bit more convenient, but I think instead of going to buy more cans of it, I am just going to use the roller, use the things that I have already. So, all right, I went ahead and poured my Binge shellac base primer in here, and I am going to go ahead and roll it on to the backs of each door. I'm gonna transfer the tape that tells me what number it is onto the front, but we're just gonna do a nice light coat. This stuff dries pretty quickly, so if we need a second coat, we can also do that. Time to paint, it's time to paint. I'm so excited because this has been a long time coming. We are gonna be going black. So I'm going with my go-to silk mineral paint from Dixie Belle. The color is called Anchor, and it's the truest, deepest black. And my client wanted a matte finish. So the reason I'm going with this one as well is because it doesn't require a top coat and it kind of dries with a matte finish. There's like a really slight sheen, and it's the perfect amount for exactly what she was looking for. So I'm gonna strain my paint into my paint sprayer. I'm gonna be using the Homeright Super Finish Max on this piece. I have two sprayers that I kind of just interchanged project to project. Really no rhyme or reason for why. I just like to switch it up to make sure that you guys are getting a differentiation of content and utensils, not utensils, but tools that you can use on your flips. This is definitely a more budget-friendly, affordable sprayer. It's generally anywhere from about $60 to maybe no more than $100 on average. And then the Wagner that I typically use can be over $200. So really just depends on your budget, but both of them work great for these types of projects. Just gonna dump 16 ounces in for now. I'll let that strain in. We wanna strain the paint anytime you get it into a paint sprayer, because there can be just loose chunks in the paint. Maybe it's not mixed all the way properly. Maybe some of these dried areas fell in and it got in there. Totally okay, but you don't want to clog your sprayer, so it's really important to take this step, or else you're gonna have issues when spraying the actual paint. I'm also gonna add just a tad bit of water and allow it to just thin down a slight bit. Usually I do that with silk paint, not a lot, just a little. Then we just pop this on and we'll plug it in and get to spraying. Okay, we're on the home stretch. Everything is painted and dry. So we're gonna finish up this piece today. I'm going to go ahead and start removing all of the tape and plastic, so that way we can work on the insides of the cabinets and make sure that all of that wood is really nice and revitalized as much as possible. So it's about to come together. I'm gonna be using Restore a Finish for just revitalizing the inside of this. It doesn't need to look super great, but again, I just wanna like give it a little bit of some pizzazz in there, kind of rejuvenate the wood. So I've got my Restore a Finish right here. I'm gonna use the color Walnut. I feel like this is the closest color, you know, to this wood. This actually might be walnut, I'm not 100% sure, but does have a little pigmentation, but nothing too crazy. All right, this baby is finished up and I really love the final result. It kind of gave me a run for my money at the end there. Doors, reattaching them with hinges, always seem to give me some type of trouble. And this piece is no different. I still even need to go back and tweak some of the doors, but overall, this piece looks amazing. I absolutely am so glad that we decided to keep the wood on these details on the front. I think that it breaks it up a little bit. It gives it a little bit of interest, and the finish is flawless thanks to my Homeright sprayer. We're gonna talk about some numbers. So as you guys know, I told you from the beginning, this was a commission piece. So I worked very closely with my client. Shout out to Donna. She actually found me on YouTube and found out that she was local. So that was super fun to get to meet her. So originally I got the piece for $75. So not a bad buy-in at all for a pretty solid piece. I spent about $20 in Bondo, which was crazy because that's like the most Bondo I've ever spent on used on a project, but we got it all smoothed out and I think it looks really nice with some wood grain still popping out, which is what she really wanted. So that was awesome. Then about $10 in sandpaper. We sanded for days, sanded that Bondo down. And then $40 in primer. $5 in tape and plastic, $45 in paint. I did get some new screws for the hinges since a lot of the older screws were stripped, and then about $5 to stain these. And I didn't top coat these because the stain I used actually has a built-in top coat. I don't think I mentioned that, but just as a reference, if you were using that Lily Moon paint smoky gel stains, then that's something that you don't need to top coat, especially if it's like not on the top of your piece. So we're all in at $210, and whenever I do a commission piece, I always like to give a range, a price range of it could be as low as this amount, but it could be as high as this amount, because I'm always finding something unknown that I will have to spend more time on the project. But if I don't, then I don't want to charge too much for my client. So this piece specifically, I quoted her $1,200 to $1,800. And I definitely ran into a couple of more hiccups than I anticipated. So we're gonna end up with $1,600, still kind of right in that middle ground. And so that'll give us a total profit of around $1,390, which is pretty great for this project. I spent around like 12 to 15 hours on this piece, which was a significant amount of time for a piece this size, but we got it all right. We got it exactly how she wants it. I couldn't be more happy with the final result, and I can't wait to show her too. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments, and I'll see you guys next week with another flip. See you on the flip side.